right, guys. Thanks for tuning into this video. This is going to be the first of a series of Tyranid tactical videos. And for the very first one that we're doing today, I have my friend Vyasar joining me. And he is another excellent Tyranid player. This guy I love bouncing ideas off of him. He goes to a lot of events, and he and I bounce ideas off each other all the time. And he also is captain of his own team. And I'm going to give him a chance just to explain who he is and what he does right now. Go ahead, man.
Thanks, Reuben, so much for having me. It's always so good to see you. We always have a lot of fun when we meet up. I am Vyasar and Reuben, as Reuben has already said. I'm the captain of Emerald Dreams. We are the largest Warhammer 40K wargaming club in Central Texas. Total membership right now is around 40 people, which is crazy. It's like I did not expect that club to get so big, but I really love it. Yeah. We're really blessed in Austin to have so many different RTTs every month. There's basically an RTT every weekend. But the last RTT of every month is Sanctum Monthly, which is run by some Emerald Dreams team members. And it's gotten really big. They've gotten big enough that they've hired other Emerald Dreams players to run the event, so everybody gets a chance at TOing, learns what it's like, what it takes to run an event, to judge an event, to TO. It's been really good and helpful, just not in terms of exposing people to judging and getting them more acquainted with rules, but really doing more community building effort, getting more people involved in the construction of third spaces has been really helpful and beneficial for our team. You'll find that there's a lot of other 40K teams out in Central Texas. Meta Slayers is another one. Happy Goats is a new one that's popping up. One of the high schools here in Austin has started their own team. But I think the big thing that draws people to Emerald Dreams more than anything else is just my wife put it best. We're a bunch of sweeties who like playing Warhammer. Truly, that's the big one. Is that we all are we try to be really sweet, nice opponents on the table, off the table. We enjoy hanging out with each other. Whether it's at a happy hour or at a tournament, and building that real strong community is our goal.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that. You guys definitely do that. I love every time I see someone from your team that I haven't met before. If I'm at an event and I get to play someone, they're wearing your jersey, I'm like, dude, I know you guys. You guys are awesome. This is going to be a fun game. And I'm always thrilled and excited. So if any of you are watching this and you see one of them at an event, be sure to go say hi. They're friendly. They're great. And introduce yourself, and you'll have a great game. I'm sure of it. All right. But today, like I said, we're going to be talking about Tyranids versus Demons. Specifically, the Demon matchup with, let's see, what's that one? Plague Legion, I believe?
Plague Legion.
Plague Legion. So we'll be doing Plague Legion, and we'll also be doing the Scintillating Legion, which is what I found. So in my experience, I feel like I learned the most from my losses, and because I just don't forget them. Something hits me hard that I wasn't expecting, and I will never forget it. And I will do my best to never let it happen again. But sometimes you get caught off guard and you learn something new. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're each going to be talking about a loss that we recently experienced and what we can do, what caused it, first of all, and then what we can do to mitigate that in the future playing Tyranids. So I'll go ahead and let you walk us through your game. We've got your score here, and we've got the map you played on, and feel free to talk us through how that went for you.
Yeah, so this was round 4 at an event this last weekend in Amarillo. Yellow City Comic-Con, for the first time ever, decided to partner with a couple different game stores and host their own GT. So there were about 33 people who came out, which is pretty good for Amarillo, and the total population is a town of 200,000. 33 people coming out, big deal. And after the first day, I was 3-0. I was feeling pretty good, and then I saw that I was getting paired into Derek on Chaos Daemons, specifically Plague Legion. Now, at that point, in 10th edition, I have only played 2 games, which is insane. I have played more than almost 150 games, more than 150 games actually now, of 10th edition, and to have only played Demons twice feels really wrong and weird, but that's the way it shook down. So I'm panicking the night before, looking at this list, trying to unpack everything it does. I'm getting on calls with my friend David Hall, one of the best Demon players in Texas, and just trying to figure out what do I do? What's this list trying to do? How do I play this mission? Because not only is this a list that I have never seen before or have little to next to no experience with, I'm also playing a mission, Burden of Trust, which isn't necessarily one of the most common missions you've been seeing until more recently. But I know, okay, I'm going into this knowing that this is going to be a learning experience, win or lose. And like Reuben said, we always learn a lot more from our losses than our gains. So looking at the map, you can very clearly see one of the biggest issues we were both going to have, or at least I thought we were both going to have, is mobility, right? I'm bringing an invasion fleet list with 3 Tyrannifexes, 2 Exocrines, a Norn Emissary, a Hive Tyrant. Like there's just a lot of bodies that need space to run around and move around. And if you look at the map, you can see getting into the middle isn't exactly the easiest thing for my list to do. My opponent had a Great and Clean One, 2 Soul Grinders, Rodigus, Beast of, like he also had a lot of big bodies. But looking over his list, one thing that became clear is that he also had a strat to mitigate that. For 1 command point, you pick a unit in the Nurgle army, it can move through models and terrains in the movement phase. Unlike the Crusher Stampede strat that lets you do that, they don't have to roll a dice to see if they get battle shocked afterwards. They just go, which is a big deal for a Great Unclean One. Especially when you factor in that they have another strat that just adds 5 inches to their movement characteristic.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So now this list that looked pretty slow and was going to have a hard time navigating, suddenly for 1 CP, they don't care about terrain. For another CP, they're moving really fast. Which is not just something you associate with Nurgle Demons.
No, I wouldn't expect that.
Not at all. So I know going into this that primary is going to be a challenge, right? That he's going to be able to challenge me pretty successfully on primary. So it comes down to where his big heavy hitters are going and where the rest of his army is going. So my best strategy is shove the Norn Emissary down the middle. So you can see, we're deployed 9 inches away. With a normal 10-inch move, the Norn can walk over that blue terrain feature and make the center objective, which is what I was able to do. He wasn't able to, he didn't fully screen me out with Nurglings. He had a lot of Nurglings, but he wasn't able to put me in full Nurgling jail, which I was very lucky on. And with a charge move, obviously the Norn made it into the center. What I didn't expect was the Plague Bearers coming right down the middle. I threw him off because on turn 1, I went first and I got out of jail. I ran forward and both units of Gene Stealers immediately engaged the Beasts of Nurgle units. He had deployed them a little bit aggressively on the corners. So I was able to reach out to them a little bit faster, cut through the Nurgling lines and make it there. And by the end of turn 1, the 2 big Beasts of Nurgle units were gone. This is another thing I sort of recognized with this list is that, yes, while the demons have Deep Strike, in this detachment, they don't have necessarily access to going up and down. So being able to remove the small pieces that he'll need later in the game to score secondary at the time felt really important. And I think it was still the right call because it threw him off his game. He wasn't expecting me to make it that far, nor was he expecting the Gene Stealer bricks with the Broodlords to do as much damage.
That seems like a strong start for sure.
Yeah, it definitely felt strong. But on turn 2, what he did is he launched 2 20-man bricks of Plague Bearers down the middle into the Norn, which had 2 effects. Number 1, it put the Norn in jail. The Norn wasn't going to move off the objective anyways, but now I can't actually fall back or do anything about the fact that there are 20 Plague Bearers just in contact with me. Number 2, all of the Plague Bearers have lethal hits on their weapons, which suddenly means they're punching up pretty aggressively into the Norn Emissary. Add that to the fact that this army throws out battle shocks in almost every phase of the game. Every single unit in this army has some kind of aura or is attached to a character with an aura or aura-related ability. He's making me take battle shocks sometimes twice a turn on the same unit, but I'm taking usually a minimum of 3 different battle shocks across the board, which with Tyranids isn't normally an issue. We've got Synapse, so that gives us 3d6 to roll battle shocks instead of 2. But when you just have to deal with volume, suddenly you become acutely aware that the best leadership you have is leadership 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even struggle with Synapse. I fail about half my battle shocks anyway.
Yeah. It's like 3-6 is great, but then he's also throwing out the Chaos Daemons leadership -1 debuff, right? So there's also that coming out, and it starts adding up very quickly. You start taking mortal wounds very quickly, and by the time it was the bottom of two, I think top of two or bottom of two, by around turn two, the Norn was just dead. He got death by 1,000 cuts from all of the little plague bearers.
Jeez.
I did manage to kill enough, I think, on the top of two that it made a hole for him to charge his Demon Prince in. And he was able to give the Demon Prince +1 damage, putting the Demon Prince on foot to flat 4 damage.
Oof.
With his once per game like rush ability with his extra attack, like that got really scary really fast. So that was sort of how the middle fell apart. Was just I wasn't able to put enough stuff there to stop it. Not being able to navigate around the terrain meant I had to go the long way around, go towards the top of the board, and then try to push angles down. One of the enhancements he had given was on the Great Unclean One, which basically said everything within 6 inches of the Great Unclean One has an 18-inch you can't shoot me bubble. And when you're stacking rupture cannons, hoping to just force one through to get that d6 + 6 damage through with their 48-inch range, you don't want to get within 18 inches of Nurgle Demons. So it presented a very bad proposition that I would have to get close to really force the issue. And you don't want to get close. The closer you get, the worse things get. The closer you get, more auras start being able to hit you, whether it's the -1 OC aura, the +1 damage, the -1 toughness, the battle shocks. Just this army has nothing but aura range. He even called his list Nurgle aura farming.
Oh gosh. Oh man.
So it very quickly, like I think by the top of turn 2, I felt, okay, I have an aggressive staging position going towards the top of the board, hopefully being able to push down the middle. The Gene Stealers have pulled down the Beasts of Nurgle and have taken sort of a command position around trying to jail him in. But very quickly, Rodriguez pushed, and a Soul Grinder pushed on the bottom right and picked up the whole unit. They got lucky with some charge rolls, and that was enough. I was able to pull the Gene Stealer unit back to my other side objective, trying to figure out, okay, because I just needed to cover it and get points. But Burden is also a mission where you score the objective that you're defending at the end of your opponent's turn. So going second helps you a lot more than going first, because you have to start guarding that objective in the command phase. So your unit already has to be there. And that was a struggle for me because, again, not really understanding how Burden worked, I wasn't able to score a ton of primary, which you can see looking at the score report. I just consistently was not getting primary that I needed. And, I don't want to blame random number generation here too much, but look at my first turn objectives, right? Assassination and bring it down.
I saw that.
Right? 2 things that are just never, ever going to happen against Nurgle Demons.
Especially turn 1.
Especially turn 1. And you can see the score just kind of played out from there. He was able to just keep encroaching and pushing on primary. I kept fighting him in the center to try to get area, to try to get storm. And it just kept not working. I mean, everything I put in just kept bouncing off. Like every time I would put a rupture cannon into something that he would expose, he would make one, if not both, of his field or his 4-up invuls, and then he would usually have a CP to re-roll it. Ultimately, I think killing the Beasts of Nurgle forced him to do more secondaries with big stuff, so Rodriguez had to stay in the corner the whole game. But that's still earning him points, right? Like it's still not a bad thing because Rodriguez can comfortably sit there, guard, and then do cleanse, do whatever action he needs to do to get the points that he needs to play the game. Especially with the Soul Grinders too, them being able to walk over terrain and models that are less than 4 inches in height meant that they were able to scuttle around the board with a little more ease. And again, this is purely inexperience of demons speaking here. My understanding with Soul Grinders is that the melee on them was a little bit more anemic, that they were primarily being brought down to be more shooting, like to give demons more quality shooting. Especially with Phlegm Bombardment, which gives them indirect damage too, which is really nice. Has the potential to pick up a whole, like take out a chunk of Gene Stealers or damage the Biovore in my list, which will hurt my secondary play. But what he used them for a lot more aggressively was melee bullies. He was able to countercharge the Gene Stealers with the Soul Grinder, and he was able to use the Soul Grinder on the bottom right to push all the way to my home objective over the course of the game. Yeah, just he used them very aggressively as melee tools, and their melee is quite good. It's high strength, it's high damage, it's got good AP. That's the other thing, right? He has the ability to throw out more AP buffs as well. I think so. Yeah, by the end of the game, it was pretty clear. Like it was just I was not in a position to score primary or secondary. My monsters were still hard for him to pick up, but he didn't necessarily have to pick them up. He just had to keep me off the parts of the board he didn't want them getting to. That kind of told the tale from there. I am happy that if this was a WTC game, it wasn't a 20-0, right? This would have been not a full blowout. I was in 43 points, so I got some points for the team. I didn't stop there. I think the main thing I learned here is that killing the Beast of Nurgle was the right thing to do. Killing the Soul Grinder that I could kill was the right thing to do. I just needed to get out faster. I have to remember that, you know, the thing that surprises my opponents the most with this list is when you roll an advance roll for a big monster, as long as you keep the Hive Tyrant near him, he's still going to be able to shoot. It's the thing that always catches people off guard is I'm going to hide everything and then I'm going to run out and you're going to get some exocrines and T-Fexes to the face.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And yeah, that's sort of the big one is that like had I been able to play the movement games more effectively, would have been a very, very different game.
Yeah. Word. If you come up against this list again using the same army, how would you play it different, do you think? What would be the biggest difference?
I think number one, I would hope for a different mission and different layout, right? I think Burden of Trust is like a game where you will only score objectives for being in no man's land is not a game that I want to play against this list. I think this list wants to play primary bully a lot more than I do. I think I would still put the Norn in the middle just to force the issue. I think it's still worth doing. That being said, I don't know that I would have gone as aggressively after the Beasts of Nurgle. I would have maybe sent one Gene Stealer unit in to pick it up, but putting the other one so close to Rodriguez and the Soul Grinder just didn't feel like it did anything. It killed some Beasts of Nurgle and then died itself. It didn't feel like I got a lot of value or punch-up ability out of it. It's worth noting, too, that the Beast keyword doesn't trigger any of the Synaptic imperatives. So I wasn't able to get lethal hits. I wasn't able to get sustained. They were still able to kill them. But yeah, it was just like I'm not getting the full value out of the unit you know, that I need. I think speed, like relying on my speed, you can only spend one unit through a wall or give one unit +5 movement. I can advance everything around the Hive Tyrant and just keep running and gunning. I got to do that more. I think like the other thing that's important to remember is if you force them to split, right? If you can force the Great Unclean One's aura to not be effective, if he has to send units away to get the job done, that means they're no longer within the loan up, like the 18-inch you can't shoot me range. You have to get him to commit outside of that. And that's how I was able to kill the units I was able to kill, is because they left the Great Unclean One's aura.
If you can get them out of that aura, and then if they do, capitalize on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing. One thing that David pointed out too is that all of these auras individually are kind of so what. I think it's that was the thing. We couldn't see the forest for the trees. You spend too much time fixating on each individual ability, and you're like, okay, that's cool in and of itself. That's cool in and of itself, but why does that really do anything or matter? And then, oh no, once they all add up together, it is quite a scary package of things that they can do. But any single piece you remove from the board pulls less of the auras away. And you know, if it's still removing the beast is important, but not necessarily as important as trying to remove the primary bullies, if you can. That's the thing. If you can get rid of the primary bullies, you gotta.
Cool. All right, good to know, man. Do you think those Gene Stealers would have done anything into the Plague Bearers if you'd sent them that way instead?
Absolutely. The unit that I had sent to the top objective, once he pushed the Plague Bearers out in the middle, I did send them into the middle. And they were pretty successful at getting rid of the Plague Bearers. That worked really well. They're a great unit into them, especially with the sustained hits and infantry, which is what I took. I took sustained hits for this because I knew I had to clear the Nurglings and the Plague Bearers. I figured everything else, I can switch to lethal hits for a CP. I can, you know, I can keep things near the Hive Tyrant for shooting for that. Like, lethal was not what I wanted here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good call. Yeah. All right. Cool, man. All right. Any other advice on this matchup in particular?
Remember that one of the enhancements that they're going to have is Canker Blight. Canker Blight says if something fails a leadership test within 6 inches of that character, that unit, it is going to a model is destroyed from that unit. That excludes monsters and vehicles, right? It has to specifically be something that's not a monster or a vehicle. So while that's really funny into like a unit of 5 Deathwing Knights, okay, you failed that leadership test, cool, your OC stays the same, but a model just dies. It's not necessarily going to do anything. Like, you're not going to lose a Tyrannifex or something just because it failed a leadership test next to it. What is crucial, though, is that you don't suffer the mortal wounds and the model removal. You just pick one or the other. specifically carves that out in the enhancement. Because the demons have the ability, if you fail a battle shock test within 9 inches of them, you suffer D3 mortals. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to that. What's going to be in range of that character, what's going to be in range of that ability to take the battle shocks, because you might think that low nop is safe because he's not charging it or because he's out of range to shoot it, but if he is within range to make it take a battle shock test, it might just die from that aura. And that does create really funny results for your opponent, but really unfunny results when you are relying on him to get that sabotage or do that action or just live a little bit longer.
Gotcha. Okay. You said that was a stratagem on top of the aura that does that?
No, so it's an enhancement called Canker Blight.
Oh, it's the enhancement. Canker Blight right here. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. So when you stack all of the auras, because it's just any time they fail a battle shock test within range, and they have a stratagem that lets them force another battle shock. Everything in this army has like Sloppity Bowpiper has the ability to make things take battle shocks. I mean, there's so much battle shock stuff coming out of this army that the threat on it is crazy.
Wild.
Yeah.
Hey, well, good to know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah,
that sounds like a really rough matchup, but hopefully anyone listening will be a little bit more prepared for that going into it with Tyranids. Let's move on and talk about the Scintillating Legion now.
Yes,
this is the one that I played against. This is the Tzeentch one, and it's got a weird detachment rule that's got a whole lot of text, but basically it says that this detachment gets a number of tokens called flux tokens. They can mostly use them for rerolls, and when they use them, they give them to your opponent. And so my opponent would have these tokens that he could save for rerolls. If he used up a reroll, he would give me that token, and then I could use it for a certain type of reroll as well. And if I still had a token at the end of my turn, then he would generate an additional token. And so he could just build up tokens throughout the game. And at first I was like, oh, cool, he gets a reroll, I get a reroll. That doesn't sound too bad, right? That's not a big deal. We'll get there. But he also had some really difficult stratagems to deal with. He also, I think all the demon detachments have a strat to go through the walls, which is handy for them, not great for us. But like you said, our monsters are a little bit more limited with the different terrain setups that there were. And he had one, which one is it? I think it's this one, Flickering Reality here, that it basically, you roll a d6, and whatever number you roll, they can't get hit on that roll. This is in the fight phase only, so fortunately it doesn't apply in shooting. But if you roll a 6, for example, then your guys are not getting hit on 6s, which also means the crits don't trigger. So it specifically says crits don't trigger. So all those lethal, sustained, whatever, they're just not happening anymore. And so it's really quite annoying to deal with, and makes those units a lot more durable. Especially those horrors that split, because if you don't kill that unit outright, then they're just splitting, and that's incredibly annoying. And if you can't get all of your attacks into them because all of a sudden one of your numbers just isn't hitting anymore, then you're really in trouble, which is what happened with me. One of the things that happened with me. My opponent was very smart. Let me see if I can figure out how to go back to the whiteboard. First of all, the event I went to was a team's event called Brush and Blade. And so it was really cool. They had Rachel. She does some cosplays for GW. She was there. She was in her Sisters of Battle outfit, which was cool. They had these really cool trophies that were just swords that were a paintbrush on the end, which was really neat. So props to Apollo and his event. It was really good. Definitely a good time. Let's see. We went there as a team and had a good time. And then, let's see. Here's the start of the game. So I was running a list that I've been running for a while with a few modifications. I had been running triple Tyrant Guard lists at events. I don't get to play very often, but I did play a triple Tyrant Guard list, full 18 Tyrant Guard at a tournament in San Antonio back in October. It was a small GT, and I was able to take it down with a triple Tyrant Guard list, which was really fun. The Tyrant Guard are really beefy, really hard to chew through. I've got a Tyrant, a Swarm Lord. The Tyrant, I'm running Synaptic Nexus, right? So the Tyrant has the enhancement to be -1 damage. The Neuro Tyrant is got the enhancement to be to improve his Neuro Tyrant Flamer thing, right? His psychic attack, which makes him really good on Overwatch. And so I usually just position these tough units where they can either get hit by something that I know won't kill them and I'll get to fight back and murder it, or I put them where the Neuro Tyrant will have great lanes of fire for Overwatch, and anyone that comes out just has to deal with it. And I usually just bully my way through the army, through the table. And I've also got a Haruspex, Exocrine, and Tyrannifex in this list, this version of it. Like I said, I did really well with that GT, and then I went to LVO with a version of the same list, and I went 5-1 there, and then I modified it again and swapped out one of the units of Tyrant Guard to a unit of Zoanthropes with that Neuro Tyrant, just to try with the added firepower. And they followed up the other 2 Tyrant Guard units with the Hive Tyrant and Swarm Lord just up through the middle in most games, with the fire support coming from the Tyrannifex and Exocrine wherever it was needed, and the Haruspex just going wherever he could cause the most problems for people. But the list I played against, it had Be'lakor, it had what the character Tzeentch Demon?
Kairos?
Kairos, thank you. Yeah,
yep.
Had Kairos, and then it had another bird just flapping his wings around there too. And so he kind of hid those because they have an ability to shoot through another unit. So he could line up the Pink Horrors, keep his big birds completely hidden from the Tyrannifex and Exocrine, and still shoot through the Pink Horrors with his guns.
Oh.
So that was really tricky and surprising. Fortunately, the big guns didn't do a lot of damage to me. Tyrant Guard are really tough. I can get the 5-up invul. I can get Armor of Contempt type strat. I can get cover. I can't remember if he ignored cover or not, but I don't think that happened too much. But I do remember the Tyrant Guard handling the shooting pretty well. I didn't suffer a lot from that. And so I just kind of forced my way into the middle with both units of Tyrant Guard and the Neuro Tyrant and his Zoanthropes right up behind so they couldn't get engaged. And that seemed to work at first. Be'lakor came in, killed a bunch of Tyrant Guard with the Swarm Lord, but didn't get to the Swarm Lord. But the Demon Prince came in behind Be'lakor, and apparently that guy was also rocking damage 4 or something like that, and he scythed his way straight through the Tyrant Guard, and that was really painful. And then the birds came out to play, and Be'lakor was still around, and the little demons were out, the little Pink Horrors. And the first unit of Pink Horrors, I was actually able to nuke off the board in one round of shooting with the Neuro Tyrant and the Zoanthropes. The blast helped, and the +1 to hit helped. And so I was able to wipe them out in a single go. But the other unit had some kind of character with them. They were -1 to hit, and he got them engaged early on and then made them the stratagem that I talked about earlier, where so I would normally be hitting on 3s with my Tyrant Guard into them, and I had like Swarm Lord, his Tyrant Guard with the Scything Talons. I had a bunch of attacks going into this unit, and he was like, okay, you're now no longer hitting on 3s, you're hitting on 4s because of -1 to hit, and on top of that, I'm popping this strat, and look, I happen to roll a 4, so now I'm only hitting him on 5s and 6s.
Oh.
And that was horrendous. And it took a long time. That unit actually lasted a while right in the center there and gummed things up, so I couldn't get into the combats that I wanted, the engagements that I wanted. It was just really rough. And I ended up getting some secondaries that just were not ideal, just because they were just hard to score. For example, I think I got Assassination or Bring It Down, and I threw everything at Be'lakor and dropped him down, and I just couldn't finish him off. So I had to hold on to that for another turn because I knew I needed to kill Be'lakor anyway, and I didn't want to draw something else that I wasn't going to be able to get. And so I don't know if it was the right move or not, but I hung on to Bring It Down. I did score it the next turn, taking down Be'lakor because he could not use the Flux tokens to reroll. But when it came down to the big birds, they could. And also the rest of this list was all flamers and screamers. And so they were all over the place. I had to keep the Hormagaunts hidden for a while because I knew once they came out, they were just getting overwatched by Flamers. He had Flamers on both sides, Flamers on his home objective. He had Screamers coming out, just gumming things up and throwing a lot of damage into my big monsters. And it was just really quite a pain. Let me get rid of this one and pull up another picture here. And I'll show you how this game ended up. So as you can see in this image, he's got Kairos and the other big chicken still flapping around. He had Flamers in the very center of the board, and he had one out of sight that was on his home objective, one more unit of Screamers that was back there. I had a Biovore on my home objective, a Haruspex on my home objective, Tyrannifex in the middle, an Elictor and Exocrine on the other objective. So I actually ended up killing the majority of his army, but those birds would not die. And the reason they would not die is because they had those flux tokens, and he was really smart about it. See, he would wait until the fight phase, because most of my damage was in the fight phase, and once I got engaged with my Tyrant or whatever, it was hard to kill them anyway, hard to put wounds on them. But when I did finally put wounds on them, let's say he failed 4 saves, he just flux tokened all of them and re-rolled them, and he also got really good at converting those re-rolls, and so he was making all of them, and then he's giving me all these tokens back in my fight phase when I have nothing else I can do after that attack. So now I'm done making all my attacks. I can't do re-rolls for anything else, and it's the end of my turn, so guess who gets another flux token? He starts his next round and gets a whole other flux token. And so this was actually the only game that I lost, and it was a very frustrating list to play against. My opponent's name was Hayden, and he was very cool. Really nice guy to play against, explained everything very clearly. It was a really clean game, but the list I found was just so frustrating to play against. I only got one banner that whole game. The game was taken hold, and let's see, what did I have here secondary-wise? I did okay secondary-wise at first, but then towards the end of the game, the last couple of turns, I just wasn't scoring anymore. There just wasn't anything else I could do. I couldn't establish. I only killed like 1 unit for no prisoners. He even stopped me from scoring Defend Stronghold by getting Kairos up there onto my objective, and it was just insane. So he ended up maxing out primaries. I could not hold down primaries. In the middle was where I was going, and then he kept throwing Screamers and Flamers and things and taking other objectives from me. And so he basically held his home objective, the one close to his home objective, and the one in the middle all game. I think I held it, the one in the middle, for 1 turn maybe, but he very consistently scored a bunch of points on primaries and ended up at 45 out of 50 on primaries. He really scored well on secondaries. He started off not doing too great, but then he scored real big on them as it went on. I think his second turn he scored a bunch of points, and then just continued to score pretty consistently after that. So the game was, it wasn't a blowout. It was, I had 65 to his 88, but and I was able to kill through a lot of things eventually, but it just took everything my army could throw out, and I still lost all the Tyrant Guard and my Neuro Tyrant and Zoanthrope unit. And the thing was, he was durable enough to survive long enough to keep scoring. And like I said, those big chickens, just with those flux token rerolls for saves that he saved to the end of his turn, or to the end of my turn, basically every turn, just, I don't know, very good play. But it's those 2 things that are the biggest deal. A smart opponent will save those flux tokens and save them up for some save rerolls and just keep these big birds alive, and do it at a time where you aren't able to spend them anymore on your turn. And the other thing that I noticed was that that ability, when you have a lot of combat units, not being able to hit on a certain number, especially against a unit that's already going to give you -1 to hit, makes those units just really durable, and they're great value for what you're paying for them. And they clogged up the middle really good, really good. So those are my 2 main takeaways.
Let me ask this, Reuben, just like you asked me. If you see this army again, what do you think you do differently? What do you think you try to change up?
I think I don't play it as aggressively next time. I think I use my lone ops and use them to score points early on. And when he starts to commit things to come out and kill them, that's when I start to trade. But I basically fed him my whole army thinking, oh, it's Tzeentch. They're good in shooting. The shooting didn't do that much damage to me. There's no way they're going to hit me that hard in combat. And I was wrong. those birds, they hit really hard in combat, and the demon prince just walked right through the tyrant guard. I was not ready for that. I was like, he's the smallest big demon on the table, and he just did the most damage. So I just did not expect them to hit that hard in combat. And I know Bellacor's there, and he's got his aura, and you can't really shoot at them all from far away. It is what it is. That's fine. But I think I still just set up, make some trades, and then play it a little more cagey, a little more carefully, instead of just rushing up and trying to bully him out of the way, because that did not work.
Yeah, I think it's one of the strangest things with Scintillating Legion. I think people will always consistently say, "Oh, demons are just like any other army with access to a ton of invols. You just it's a 4-up game. Whoever rolls the most 4-ups is going to win. If they start not rolling that many, they're going to lose." But the flux tokens are what makes the big difference here, as you've identified, right? Is the ability to just consistently access those rerolls and prevent you from making a lot of advantage out of them in the fight phase. That's what decides the game right there. Just making sure that you have consistent access to being able to reroll whatever 4-up you want.
Yeah, exactly. And also, one of the things that my opponent told me was that Tyranids are his preferred matchup because they just don't have the volume to get through all of his rerolls. The 4-up invul and all those rerolls, you can't throw enough damage out, and it proved to be true. And so I think one of the keys here is, like I said, to just kind of throw out some lone ops, try and take objectives, score early on, and then when he starts trying to take things out, anything that gets exposed, you pile on it, because you need that volume. You can't just throw the whole army out there and have this unit of Tyrant Guard and the Tyrant fight one engagement, and the Swarm Lord and the Tyrant Guard fight another engagement, and you can't split that up, because no one ends up killing their intended target. And he will out-attrition you with all of those rerolls. And that was what happened to me. I think if I had to play it different, I would try to force engagements and pile on to the same thing at the same time. Like I said, that was a little bit hard. For example, I tried to get into Be'lakor that way, but he had the horrors that kept coming back and were super hard to hit. And so they kind of gummed up the lines there, and only the Swarm Lord was able to fight with Be'lakor, and that didn't go well for me. Ended up knocking him out with the Tranifex, fortunately, because he couldn't reroll that with the Flux token. So keep that in mind. Be'lakor can't use them, so pile on him for sure with your shooting as soon as you're able. But yeah, anything that you can't pile multiple units into is basically just going to survive. It's a lot more survivable than you'd expect. Flamers and Screamers I was able to kill. They don't do a lot to big monsters like a Tranifex. So if you can kill the scoring units, that's great. I did a lot of screening out to keep him from actually getting into my lines, which helped a lot and forced him to come straight on at me, which was the reason that I still had stuff left at the end of the game and was able to score some primaries on this. But he also went second and was able to score real big at the end of the game, both with primaries and secondaries. I think he scored 15 points on primaries, and then he scored 9 points on secondaries.
That is a 24-point turn, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. Woo! Yeah, he pulled a 24-point turn on me, and it was brutal.
especially in a teams format. Going second unlocks that high scoring potential late game, creates all kinds of issues. Reuben, let me ask you this. A consistent thing I'm hearing from my players, from Demons opponents, is that the Tyranid matchup in a Demons is heavily favored in Demons' favor. That in general, Nids do not want to be playing this for Warhammer against Demons. How do you feel about that assessment?
Would concur with that. If you can avoid that matchup in a team setting, especially, I would avoid it for sure. Obviously, in an individuals event, you don't really have a choice, but do your best to avoid that matchup if you can. It's not ideal. It's not ideal. Tyranifex, he's great, but his AP doesn't matter. The Excrim's AP doesn't matter. They're just rolling 4-ups all day, or whatever demon you're shooting at, right? And they just don't care. You need volume. I think that's why your Gene Stealers did well. They have a ton of attacks, and they did well into the Plague Bearers, despite how hardy those things normally are. But if you can't throw volume out, if you've got Hive Tyrant with a handful of decent attacks, and you've got Tyrant Guard with just a few attacks each, I mean, even the Scything Talon Tyrant Guard, they were pretty good, except when they're effectively -2 to hit. And so it really is volume. If you can pile on the attacks, you can kill stuff, but you really got to gang up on units to do it. And it's hard to gang up on units while also scoring, while also screening out, while also preventing your opponent from running away with primaries. And so it really just is not an ideal engagement. This was the only game I lost at the event, and I played against some really good opponents. I played some very tough matchups, and this was the only one that I actually dropped. So
yeah, same for me, Reuben. I went first in every single one of my games. I got 200-point games in this against these guys, and this Nurgle Demons one was my only loss, and it was like you said, the losses stick with you because you learn the most from them. Yes, they stick with you because players are salty sometimes, but also they stick with you because it's where you have that greatest potential to learn, especially having so few reps into Demons. I feel like I learned so much more about the way this game works after playing it.
yeah, absolutely. Same.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like I said, I think I know this army better now. I think I know how to play against it a little bit better. I can't say that I would win it next time around, but I think I would get a little bit better on the score there.
Yeah.
And again, it was a teams format, so I didn't get blown out or anything. I still had a pretty decent score in the end for my team, but it was a loss, and it was a tough one. My team captain didn't know that I would lose this match. They counted on me winning it. He didn't know that Tyranids is a bad matchup into this. No one on the team knew that Tyranids was a bad matchup into this list. And I didn't even know what this detachment did until I started playing against it. So you live and you learn.
You live and you learn. But I do think that's what Demon players are banking on, right? Especially Scintillating, Legion, and Nurgle, because people have been, if you have played a Demons matchup in the last year, you probably played against the standard Demonic Incursion list, right? Double Great and Clean one, Be'lakor, Monster Mash Demons, right? Maybe one Bloodthirster with you're used to seeing a Shalaxian Keeper. You're used to seeing them deep striking 6 inches away. So you learn to screen, you learn to play their game and beat them at their game. But for all of these new Grotmus detachments that have only been around for the last couple of months, for those of us who haven't played a ton, or those of us who just haven't seen a ton of Demons in general, suddenly you're going into a game with little to no knowledge about what this list do, and it does. And that's what makes them the most damning. I will say, in a teams format, I do think that most Demon lists are not angling for a big win. Most Demon lists are angling to hold the score at a nice tight draw. No one's going to get less than an 8 or more than a 12, I think, against Demons. I think that's genuinely what they are going to end up doing, even if that's not what their stated purpose is. I think, like, you're right, thinking about your comments about your game and looking back at my performance, yeah, I probably could have played it more conservatively and held it to a much tighter draw than with the points that I gave up. You did a great job keeping it so close because you were able to remove so many of the tools that he had to focus on doing the things he needed to get points and not much else.
Yeah, he did give me some credit there. He told me I was the first person to ever get through one of his pink horror units. And I only was able to do that because I swapped out one of those units, the Tyrant Guard, for the Zoanthropes. And that definitely made an impact. Zoanthropes also put a lot of damage onto Be'lakor early on. And so that helped a lot. And I was able to put some damage there that he wasn't expecting early on, and just taking out some of the scoring units. But in the end, he still ran away with the score and scored really well.
Let me ask you a silly question. If we had swapped opponents, if we had swapped events that day, and you played my Nurgle opponent and I played your Tzeentch opponent, how do you think that would have gone?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think I have the volume to take down the things like the Plague Bearers. I think I can make those engagements in the middle and just survive with a ton of wounds because of all of the wounds that the Tyrant Guard have. I think I hold that middle a little bit better, but at the same time, the battle shocks might get me because I only have a handful of units that are sitting there on the middle. So that's tough to say how that would play out.
Yeah.
Well, how do you think you would have done into this list, this particular detachment with yours?
I think I think he has to really be cautious about screening against the Gene Stealers because I'm going to
Mhm.
get, especially looking at your board on Tipping Point, they're going to
Mhm.
cross the board really, really fast, and they can pick up a unit of horrors like nobody's business. They're going to swing
Yeah.
straight in. I'm hitting on twos, rerolling ones, so I don't care about the -1 to hit as much. Um,
Mhm.
Given that I'll also have sustained into infantry, because I think against this list, looking at everything he's got, you definitely you take sustained and just go for removal of all the war
Yeah.
pieces. Doing that just breaks, oh, like without the pinks, this army starts looking a lot less scary.
Mhm.
And then I can bully primary with the big thick monsters, with the Norn. I think this army has less answers to the Norn than it would like,
Yeah.
and I think
Dude
that's
did
really
not do the
good.
damage to me that he really needed it to do. He really had to get into combat. Unfortunately, I put my army right in front of his to let him get into combat to do that damage. Had I played it a little further back and been more reactionary, I don't think he gets through those Tyrant Guard, and I choose what to pile into.
Yeah,
And I think that's the play. But yeah, I
yeah.
think the Gene Stealers are great. The only thing I say about that is he also had units of 6 Flamers set up
Mm.
ready to Overwatch, which is horrifying, and how I eventually ended up losing my Hormagaunts. I didn't move them. He didn't kill them on Overwatch at first. I killed a few Flamers. He knocked the unit down, but eventually it was the Flamers that knocked them out. But yeah,
That's a really, really good point. The Flamer Overwatch is still pretty scary.
yeah, and they're so fast. He just puts them where he needs, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden they're ready to Overwatch. And you can see this layout was pretty light on terrain. There's some big pieces, but you can see there's some huge firing lanes right across the table.
Yeah.
And normally my army doesn't care so much about that. I'm just generally relying on toughness and armor saves anyway. I don't need the cover as much, but when the Flamers are ready to Overwatch, normally that's good for me because I've got this great Overwatch unit with the Neuro Tyrant and Zoanthropes. But if someone's doing it back to me with 6 Flamers, well, that can be a problem, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think you're right. Gene Stealers do really well into this because they have that volume, and that's
Mhm.
what you need to take this army on.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I think that's it. I think that's it. You need to get volume to get into these demons and knock them out.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's the main thing, and I do think that's what would make you an effective opponent for Nurgle is that you have the volume to threaten everything on the table. He has to be picky with what he wants to send the Greater Unclean One into, or what he wants to send a Soul Grinder into.
Hmm.
His indirect into you is a lot less effective than it is to me. He's hoping to pick up Hormagaunts, which not with 2 Soul Grinders is he going to pick up all the Hormagaunts in one turn. um,
That is
yeah,
true.
yeah. He's got to fish a lot more for that against you, and your high toughness makes it a much bigger issue to him. He's not picking up everything so quickly. He's not able to push as hard. He puts you in Nurgling jail, and you're like, "Great, I'm gonna kill everything you put in front of me." That's as simple
Yeah,
as it
I
gets.
do kill Nurglings pretty well, so and I get
Yeah,
out of that jail pretty quick.
yeah, exactly.
Man. Yeah, I've also knocked out a unit of Nurglings on Overwatch with the Zoanthropes and the Neuro Tyrant before,
Oh
so
hell yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
pretty fun.
The
A lot of
blast.
screening units find out that unit does a lot of Overwatch damage.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. That's why I bring one T-Fex with the acid spray. Just D6
Hmm.
plus 6 shots. You get the little guns with sustained on them. Like it. I picked up the whole unit of Nurglings that way, and I would have done it again in Overwatch. You know, my round 3 opponent was on Mordaka. He moved a truck into a spore mine and it blew up. So he set up his commandos on the top floor. After he set up his commandos, I overwatched them and killed 9 of them with the acid spray flamer.
Man, that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, that's awesome, man. All right. Well, I think that we have talked through everything that we need to talk through on this for these matchups. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you hopping on this call and giving us your insight. And hopefully, next time either one of us runs into demons, we'll be a little bit more prepared for them.
Yeah, that's the hope, Reuben. Thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you, man. You're one of my closest bug brothers in Texas, and
Absolutely, brother.
absolutely. And I hope we get to see each other soon.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking to come at some events up your way, so we'll see. We'll make it happen. All right. Thanks again. And to everybody that took the time to watch this video, thank you. I hope you learned something. I hope this was a valuable conversation for you. I know it was for me. And we'll have some more videos like this out soon. Thanks a lot.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.